Hey there folks, it's me, Swank Ivy. I'm bringing you another Letters to an Asexual. This should be number 70. So today I'm going to talk about something coming from a little bit of a different direction than usual. So normally my Letters to an Asexual videos are me reading somebody who is ignorant, expressing their ignorance and me correcting them, or every once in a while it's a positive thing, something from another asexual or asexual supporting person or aromantic or something like that who wants me to talk about a subject. But this time I am going to show you a conversation I had with a literary agent from back when I was trying to get my book published. If you weren't aware, which you should be if you watch my channel, but if this happens to be your first video, I'm the author of a book on asexuality called The Invisible Orientation. And it was published in 2014. It was acquired in 2013. And before I could get a publisher to pick it up, I had to pitch it to literary agents to represent me to publishers so that I could get a good deal, so that they could negotiate my contract and, all the stuff that literary agents do, which I'm not going to go into. But it's kind of like you have to sell your idea, and especially with a nonfiction book, you don't have to have the book written yet when you pitch to the agents. You just have to sell them on your idea and give them a book proposal. I had done all of my research on this. I had written a book proposal, and I thought I had a pretty decent understanding of how to do querying because I had already acquired literary agency representation for my fiction. So I figured it would be pretty similar in nonfiction. It was very similar in many ways, but there were some notable differences, which of course, as I just mentioned, the biggest difference is you use a proposal rather than the actual text of your book for the most part to try to get somebody interested in your idea. So when I was querying, I looked for people who represented nonfiction, mostly in sort of stuff like lifestyles and sociology and culture. And I was also looking for people who had a slightly offbeat perspective so that they wouldn't be super conservative about their expectations with my work. I didn't want to deal with somebody who would respond to me by arguing with me about the validity of asexuality, for instance. Unfortunately, that's kind of what I got in one of my responses, and I was absolutely floored that I received a response like this. And so I wanted to read you what my initial pitch sounded like and then what this person said in response to me. And I will start with the pitch letter that I sent to him, to this agent. And at the time, my book, which is now called The Invisible Orientation, which is a title that the publisher chose for it, was being pitched under the title So You Think You're Asexual, which was like a little, I don't know, funnier, but definitely more poorly conceived than the end result because, I wanted it to be for people who don't think they're asexual. So, for us and them. So here is what I sent to this literary agent who represented what I thought was my kind of book. And dear Mr., his name, I'm writing to seek representation for my alternative sexuality title, So You Think You're Asexual, An Introduction to the Invisible Orientation. I saw that you represent books on lifestyle and popular culture, so I thought my book might fit right in. My project is a concise, language-accessible introduction to the topic of asexuality, designed to be a first look at the topic for those who identify as asexual and those who want to understand them. There are currently no traditionally published mainstream books on this subject. What if you weren't attracted to anyone? A growing number of people today are identifying as asexual, they aren't sexually attracted to other people, and they consider it a sexual orientation, like gay, straight, or bisexual. A commonly overlooked and dismissed orientation, asexuality is estimated to affect approximately 1% of the population. However, because of the overt sexuality of society, most asexuals feel isolated and ill-informed. They remain invisible, confused, and think they're broken because they cannot relate to a central aspect of human life as we know it. Is it a hormone disorder? Can asexual people have relationships? Should it be cured? This book outlines what asexuality is, counters misconceptions, provides resources, and puts asexual people's experiences in context as they move through a very sexual world. It includes information for asexual people to help understand their orientation and what it means for their relationships. And it includes tips and facts for those who want to understand their asexual friends and loved ones. My qualifications for writing this book include the following. I've been writing about asexuality awareness since 1998. After catching media attention for my online writings, I participated in several mainstream magazine interviews. Some years and several interviews later, I created 2 series of asexual-themed YouTube videos to reach a different demographic. These earned me more media attention, many subscribers, and a part in a documentary as a major interviewee, Asexual by Arts Engine. Premiered at Frameline, the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival in June 2011, now available on iTunes. I also picked up a spot writing professionally published articles on the subject for Good Vibrations, a respected sex-positive magazine. I've been mentioned on international television and interviewed for various academic and human interest pieces, usually pseudonymously under the name Swank Ivy or Ivy, but my legal name has also appeared in several of the interviews. I have a full proposal and sample chapters available if you're interested. As requested in your nonfiction submission guidelines, I am pasting my bio and resume below, along with the first 5 pages of my manuscript, tentatively completed at 35,000 words. Thank you for your consideration. And then I pasted the stuff he asked for. This is how he responded to that letter. Dear Ms. Decker, you ask, after all, if something exists, shouldn't there be a book on it? That's an interesting question, but in general, in the world that literary agents inhabit, publishers are only interested in publishing books that will sell many copies. In order to sell this, you need to write a book proposal, even if the book's already written. And that proposal should emphasize whatever information there is about the sheer number of asexuals out there and anything that is known about how to reach them. Unfortunately, many of your fellow asexuals probably don't identify in any way as queer. What do they identify as, and how does one reach them? Since you know your audience better than any publisher would, you have to tell the publisher how to find them in your proposal. If you identify even a smallish niche market that is identifiable and quantifiable and reachable, I think this book could sell. If you identify a market that can't be reached in any presently existing forum, it'll be a really tough sell. That's my advice. So, this is what I replied to this fellow. Dear Mr. His Name, thanks for your response. I appreciate your feedback. As mentioned in my initial query, I do have a full book proposal available to interested parties. Regarding reaching the asexual population, the proposal does have a section devoted to this, and as I've been an instrumental person in distributing information among this population, I feel I have established connections throughout our various networks. For instance, a documentary featuring me and 4 other asexuals has been screened around the world since last year's premiere at San Francisco's Frameline Festival. I write for a sex-positive magazine whose senior editor agreed to help with publicity. I do a YouTube show on a channel which has over 250,000 views, and I'm very linked in with the asexual groups on the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, our groups on Facebook, Tumblr, and LiveJournal, and the Asexual Awareness Week team. Regarding the queerness of asexuals, according to the community census last year, about 40% of asexuals identify as part of the LGBT movement, and another 38% consider themselves allies. Many believe asexuality is inherently queer, and those who do not still believe we count as a gender/sexuality minority. Nearly all of our mainstream awareness efforts have hooked into existing queer/LGBT/GSM orientations and communities. Most of the screenings of the documentary about us were held at gay film festivals, and pride parades in major cities sometimes have an asexual contingent. It's not just asexuals I'd want to reach, of course, which is why much of my education efforts have been through mainstream channels as well, Salon, Marie Claire, The Daily Beast. This information, in a more specific and laid-out sense, is included in my book proposal, which I plan to send to anyone who requests it. Thank you for your advice. It's good to know I seem to be at least on the right track with the type of information I'm providing, even though I'm by no stretch of the imagination a marketing type. I don't see that you expressed interest in seeing my proposal, but were you interested in seeing my project? And he wrote back and said, sounds good, please send the proposal as an attachment. And, of course, that interaction left a bad taste in my mouth anyway. But not only that, but he emailed me back like 4 or 5 months later and said that he had let it slide. And he said, I've let this slide under the onslaught of fall business. Is it still available? If so, I want to go back over it and maybe work with you on a few more revisions. I think it's got potential but needs a little polishing. And I think by that point I had already signed with someone. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, yeah, I wasn't real happy with how he responded to that. Most notably, that I straight up said I had a proposal, and he's like, "Well, you see, you're gonna have to write a book proposal," and like I don't know how this works. I mean, that's not anything about asexuality, but it's just like, did you think that, were you so sure that I was approaching you without any clue of how this works that you just kind of read every other sentence? I don't quite get that. But then on top of that, he presumed to tell me how asexual people identify. It's just, well, this makes sense to me, this thing that I have never Googled or looked up. Somebody who represents this community is telling me this, and he's just like, no. See, that's not going to work, because I'm sure they don't identify as queer, so you're going to have to find out ways to reach them, and, we're only interested in books that'll sell. And I'm just thinking, wow. And I had to wonder at the time if he just thought it was an idea that I invented, that despite all of the information that I gave him about media attention and my place in it and my long history of involvement with it, and the fact that it was relatively mainstream, just kind of went like this. And he just saw this as such an oddball idea that he assumed he was dealing with a noob. I don't know. But that happens sometimes when I talk to somebody, just, a layperson, and I'm explaining, oh, well, actually I identify as asexual, and they immediately fall into this, it's not a curiosity mode. They've already assumed that it's not a thing, and they're like explaining to me like, well, you can't just make that up, or don't you understand that humanity is fueled by sexual drives, and if you're saying you don't have one of those, then like, how can that be possible? They don't ever think for a second, maybe I should revise my perspective on something that I've never heard of. In all these years I've been alive, I'm discovering a new concept, and instead of being curious about it, or instead of thinking maybe I need to understand a little bit about this on my own before I barrel in with my assumptions, they just don't think it's necessary to have any knowledge about it before they tell me what I should do with it. And obviously, like, I was trying to be polite in my response, but a comment like that had already made me unwilling to work with somebody like that, because I felt like every conversation would be like that. He would be talking to me like I don't know what's going on, and that I'm not in control of what I'm doing, that I've always got all this stuff that I need to learn that I already learned, and I already demonstrated that I learned. I didn't do it wrong. I approached him with the correct format, with an offer of a proposal, with, hints of what was to come, and he just still treated me like I was clueless. That really it got under my skin a little bit. And you don't want to have somebody representing you who thinks you don't know what you're talking about, who comes from a fundamental perspective that your subject matter is not of interest to many people, or that you have no idea how to reach those people. So I don't know if he has learned anything about it since, or if he's gotten a better approach to talking to people about these kinds of things. But you have to find a good balance when you're aspiring to do something like I was at the time, between trusting professionals and trusting, their greater knowledge and their greater experience, and also trusting your experience. there are people that if a guy said something like that to them from the perspective that he was in, they would just assume, oh, I must have done something wrong. It's me, it's my fault. But I didn't think it was my fault at all. Nobody else reacted to me like that. And the people who were interested requested my proposal. And, I had several other requests. So, just seemed like maybe he just wasn't reading closely, which is irresponsible. So, not the kind of person that you want to help carry your stuff into the world. Anyway, it found a home with a decent publisher, and it's still in print years later. I'm still getting messages about it all the time, about how important it was, and even though I already had an established network to reach people who wanted to buy it, the people I was most thinking about when I wrote a book were the people who were yet to discover it, who weren't part of those established channels, who weren't the ones who were waiting to buy it. They were waiting to find it and waiting to find themselves, and I wanted it to be out there to find them. So anyway, that's the end of this video. I'll see you all next time. Bye.